feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
Watson, touchdown! Hunter Renfrow.
He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball advantage. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Make sure you find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You can download that in your phone. It's free, and you can watch and listen to our program daily in its entirety. And always, of course, check us out if you happen to miss anything. Across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It is also our text line, and you can pop us a note. Of course, if you're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever, and you want to send us a message, go ahead and do that, and Darren will make it a part of our program, just like Cory McCartney will be in about 8 minutes. JC Shurburtt will be at 12:30, and then it's time for Carolina football, Part 5 of a 10-part series with our friend Keith Allsep, the host of the Locked on the Gamecocks podcast. We've got some Olympics to get to, but it's a full day. And Darren, on the baseball side of things, even though football practice, the NFL guys are reporting for camp, college dudes are starting to report as well. They'll all get on the gridiron next week sometime. We got a trade deadline coming up this week, and some of the hot names in the sport are certainly heating up those conversations. So a lot to talk to Cory about here in just a little bit. But, dude, the rain is killing me, not to mention this sinus infection I've had for 3 or 4 days. It won't go away. So the weather is a little dreary out there.
I put some seed into the front yard, so I need the water. I don't need the lake necessarily, but I do need the water. So it has been helping. But I will say this. There's a reason I'm wearing this shirt. It's the 2019 World Series Championship shirt for the Washington Nationals, because I've hung my hat on that for a while, because even though it counted last year, I pretend like it didn't count. And it's over, right? Strasburg has season-ending surgery coming up, and it could be career-altering. Max Scherzer will be the biggest name to go, and it could be as soon as tonight. So shed a tear for the Nationals run. It's over, but please don't trade Turner. Please don't trade Turner, and then re-sign him when that time comes. But that's why I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Baseball sells like no other sport when it's time, or when they think it's time to rebuild. Of course, Cory will fill us in on that. But yeah, and Nats could easily be without all three of them within, 48, 72 hours. So,
yeah, I mean, Strauss is done. Scherzer is going to go. It's just a matter of where. Mike Rizzo was on with one of the DC stations earlier today, the general manager, and he explained what many folks who have been closely watching this situation for years know. Scherzer and Rizzo are very, very, very close. Rizzo said on the radio today, it's a relationship with a player like he's never had throughout his career. So he's got input from Scherzer on where Scherzer wants to go, and don't discount the fact that Scherzer could end up signing with Washington in the offseason, but who knows? Max Scherzer is not an absent part of these discussions.
Yeah, essentially he could be rented out, essentially is what they could do, and then re-sign him depending on what things look like in the future. It's so complicated to even get into some of this sometimes. The financials just, they don't make sense to the common folk like us who don't look at these numbers every day like they do upstairs. The Braves are interesting. Corey's been saying for a while he thinks that they should probably, not basically rent players themselves and, maybe try to make some other moves that are more long-term, but they're still only 4 games out. It's not like the Mets have just trounced to some 7, 8, 10 game lead in the East. So it'll be interesting to see what Braves do. I have no idea. Adam says, don't worry, the Braves will screw up and not pay Freddie, and he will sign with a West Coast team, which, of course, that certainly could happen. So we'll kind of see. I tell you what, too, I'm interested to talk to Corey about Kumar Rocker. There's a report out there, the New York Post has it, that there could be some issues with him signing with the Mets because of something they found, some type of arm issue as he has gone through his physicals. This wouldn't be the first arm ever to be drafted with an issue, but he's basically reached a handshake agreement with the Mets for $6 million as part of his signing bonus. So they might be looking at this saying, yeah, we'll sign you, but it isn't going to be for $6 million, and here's why. And then does he come back? Does he settle for less? Do they push that through and sign at $6 million? Who knows?
Yeah, and it's a big deal because, number one, that handshake agreement you talked about. Number two, the Mets have been floating around the idea, or at least in baseball circles, people have floated around the idea that you sign Rocker and maybe you can get him for a couple of innings for a postseason run, right? It's a nasty enough arm that maybe that possibility was floated out there. So we'll have more on that when we bring Corey in.
That's right. 12:07 on a dreary and rainy Wednesday afternoon here in the low country of South Carolina. Gamecock gold. Congratulations to former women's basketball player Alicia Gray, part of the 3-on-3 U.S. Women's basketball gold medal winning team over there in Tokyo. And so that is really, really, really cool. The Olympics last night, a bunch of swimming was in play, and it was neat to see Katie Ledecky 1,500 meters.
Mm-hmm.
It took about 15 minutes. I mean, it was wild. They actually, the U.S. went gold, silver in that race. The men had a nice night as well. But the story, of course, that everybody's talking about across the country is Simone Biles. And, we're not going to really get too much into that here. Simone Biles has withdrawn herself from the Olympics because she's got some mental stuff going on. And you know what? That's her prerogative. I'm not going to debate for 15, 20 minutes like everybody else on planet Earth is, whether she should or shouldn't, or whether it's good for her or good for someone else. I don't really care. That's her decision.
Doesn't impact her legacy at all. And she hasn't withdrawn completely. She has taken herself out of the all-around competition. There is still a possibility. They have not announced it, either Biles or Team USA, whether she'll compete in some of the individual events, but the individual all-around, the all-encompassing thing, she has taken herself out of as well.
That's right.
There's a sports aspect to it that I do think is interesting. If you're not in a good mental space and you're doing like flips and stuff, I don't know, seems scary.
Yeah, look, I'm not a women's gymnastics expert, so I'm going to reserve comment on this one. Again, I just don't really care. I mean, I've seen a bunch of people talk about it. I have just gone right through it. You know what I'm saying? Darren, I hope she's okay. That's at the end of the day. That's
right.
That's what my extent is.
That's what matters.
She's okay. If she's not okay, then she needs to get that figured out. I don't have anything else to say about it. So, good luck to Simone Biles. Team USA, by the way, 31 medals. They continue to lead the medal count in Tokyo. This guy deserves a gold medal all the time, especially for his performances on our program every week. It is Cory McCartney at a ballpark near you somewhere. My gut tells me outside of Atlanta, Georgia. What's up, man?
That's right. So this is the Prep Baseball Report future game. So you've got kids from all over the country. 32 teams here. So should be pretty cool.
Is that Cobb? Is that East Cobb's complex? I can't tell.
No, we're actually we're at Lake Point. We're northwest of Atlanta. That's where I'm at right now. So got a bunch of interviews lined up with some kids. There's some of the top talent in the country in the next couple classes coming up. So a lot of the names you're going to end up hearing in MLB drafts down the line. they're about to take the field behind me.
What college coaches have you seen roll through there recently? I know Skylar Meade was over there not too long ago. I mean, pretty much every coach in our neck of the woods makes their way to this event.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen guys rolling around with Florida State stuff on, basically any school you can think of. There'll be, I think there's about 300 coaches expected to be here throughout the weekend, so it's gonna be pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I'm an idiot. I said East Cobb. You actually work for Lake Point, so sorry about that.
There you go. No worries.
If you see Dean Keener wandering around, tell him I said.
I do.
Yeah. Well, good. Tell him I said what's up. A longtime friend.
I will do that.
I'm looking forward to kind of monitoring this because I was reading something earlier. John Whittle with thebigspur.com. John Whittle at thebigspur.com. Carolina's got coaches over there. Matter of fact, two newly hired coaches to the Gamecocks baseball program, Justin Parker, their pitching coach, and Chad Calais, who they just hired formerly of Texas A&M, both just getting to South Carolina, both, though, heading over your way to watch a couple of guys or a few guys or whomever. I think some have already committed, some have maybe one or two have signed, and then some other dudes. So, all right, Cory, well, let's get to the big leaguers here. We got the trade deadline coming up. Let's just start with Darren's field, Darren's interests. Max Scherzer. It looks like he's not going to stay in Washington. If he doesn't, where does he land?
Yeah, I mean, the word is that there's 8 teams in the mix for him right now. The Dodgers, Giants, Padres, Red Sox, Rays, Blue Jays, Astros, and Mets. But he's said to like the West Coast. So, I mean, you think about the Dodgers, Giants, Padres. I mean, could the Padres get any better? They've already gone out and gotten Adam Frazier, and now they could potentially get Max Scherzer. So we know they're going all in to chase down the Dodgers this year. So he's willing to trade, to waive his 10-5 rights for this deal. So we'll see. But this to me, you can talk about the Cubs guys, Bryant, Rizzo, Kimbrel, Baez. This is the guy to me that has the potential to change everything.
Oh, no question. What about Trey Turner?
Yeah, I think they hold on to him. As much as he has value, I think I just can't see them moving Trey Turner. To me, you talk about a young asset like that. I mean, the thing with Scherzer is he's so expensive after this year. That's why, to me, I think they ultimately move him.
What do you think about that,
hot here, man?
It's
hot. It's hot.
I'm worried, very much so, that he would get moved. Turner would, but obviously I don't think
we're going sunglasses.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
So, but
too bright.
It's pouring rain here.
So. The Max thing is going to happen. That's why I'm wearing this shirt. As long as he doesn't go to the Mets, then it'll be fine. And I don't think that's going to happen. So I'll be okay.
Yeah, I can't see him going in division. As much as they want to recoup something, I just can't see doing it in division. It just makes no sense.
So West Coast, he lands on the West Coast.
Yeah.
What about the Braves? Here's the thing. They're still, it feels like this has been the case all year. They're 4 games back in the division.
Yeah, it's one step forward, one step back with this team. And, obviously they've already gone out and gotten Jock Peterson. But I think when you look at their inability against really high-end starters, you think about the way that they struggled against Yu Darvish, and they really couldn't get a lot going against Marcus Stroman. This is just an offense right now that has its highs, but it's still incomplete without Acuna. And there's no changing that. But it's funny to me that Adam Duvall is a name that is being talked about with them, a guy they could have had that they let walk. And now they're potentially talking about, going out and try to get him like he could be the salvation that they need to put him and Jock Peterson out there in that outfield. But I think anything the Braves do it's not going to be anywhere near as exciting as maybe it would have been if Acuna was still in the fold. I think they're going to be tentative, much more tentative than I would hope they would be if I was in the GM seat. But certainly it feels that the way that they're headed.
So they've won 2 of 3 against the Mets. If they win tonight, they'll be 3 games back. Noah and d'Arnaud are getting close, Cory.
Yes.
From a recovery standpoint, maybe within the next week or 2, maybe.
Yep.
So where does that factor in here?
Yeah, I mean, it was supposed to have pitched in an actual game. It got rained out, so they did a simulated game with him. They're not sure where his next game is going to be. He's going to pitch somewhere within, the Braves organization, not at the big league level, but the next game will get him that much closer. There's still really no word whether or not he's going to come back as a reliever or a starter. I would think, if you're not going to go out and make a maneuver to make this bullpen stronger, that's the best move you have to try to make this bullpen stronger, is to try to find a slot for to come in there and try to hold things down a little bit for you.
There was a question about Duvall. Did the Marlins turn down an offer, or were they just not able to come to an agreement?
My understanding was they just couldn't come to an agreement, that things were not, it was not turned down. They're just not able to come to an agreement. And
all right, so
time. You get till 4:00 tomorrow.
4 o'clock. That's right. We'll be monitoring. Of the teams in the National League, we'll get to the American League in a second. The teams in the National League, who are we monitoring the most as buyers?
Ooh, I know I already mentioned them, but I think the Padres for sure, and then I think the Mets, because the Mets, the fact that they're even calling on Scherzer. I mean, this is the thing. They just went out and got Rich Hill, a 41-year-old, to try to just get some innings for them because things are in such, dire shape in their rotation. Obviously Lindor and his issues. I mean, David Peterson is one of the 60-day DL. They need innings. So I think you're going to definitely have the Mets in there. The Dodgers, I think if you look at Craig Kimbrell, that's a potential landing spot for him just because of the fact that, their bullpen has not been as locked down as you think. But I think, to me, the focus is really on those West Coast teams as they kind of jockey for position. And then the Mets and whether or not they're going to try to supplement things when they've kind of so far weathered so many injuries.
What about in the East? What about the Phillies? Where do they fall in all of this?
Yeah, I think it feels like they're in the same position as the Braves, right? Like Dave Dombrowski said, we're going to be aggressive and we're going to try to, make this team better, but they just can't seem to get a grip. And Kimbrell's been announced as a potential landing spot with the Phillies as well. But it just seems like they're in the same spot as the Braves. Like neither one of them can kind of get things going. And obviously, you have Nola. You feel like Velasquez is. They need something else in that rotation besides, hoping that you're going to get the best of Nola each time out. So I would hope that they would try to go out and try to do a little bit of something, but it just seems like nobody can make up ground against the Mets, who have just been in this spot despite all the setbacks they've had.
All right, so in the American League, let's start out west. I found this stat this morning just unbelievable. So you've got Houston and you've got Oakland leading the Western Division in the American League. Congratulations to that young man for that end-of-park home run that he just hit there.
There's a national championship game going on right behind me, so it's in the bottom of the sixth inning. So
you look like you're at the beach. I've been looking at this thinking there hasn't been a guest on the show with a better background or even one that's comfortable.
That's true.
Kind of cool, I mean, you get the whole I can kind of give you the whole get the whole field out there, and it's pretty sweet.
It's all turf,
Not
right?
bad. Yeah, it is. It's Shaw Turf put all this turfs in it. If you walk out there, it's kind of, it'll pebble up on you a little bit. But I've seen some funky slides, especially when it gets wet. Kids can't get any traction out there. They just slide right over the bag. But man, it looks like it's a blast to play on.
All right. Speaking of a blast to play in the West right now. So you've got Oakland, you got in second place, you got Houston leading the division. And then you've got Seattle, 8 games over 500 in third.
Yeah.
But Seattle's run differential is minus 49, but somehow they're 8 games over 500. So if it's almost like if they just had what are they missing? Like they're in contention here. I mean, there's 7 games out in the West, and they're probably not going to win the division, but they've certainly got a shot at the wild card. Is Seattle a serious contender, especially in the buyer's market right now?
Yeah, I think they are, but they're such a weird team, right? It's like you have one of the biggest trading chips on the market in Mitch Haniger, because you've got all Kellenic, all these outfielders, Taylor Trammell. You've got so many guys within your system that are outfielders, and you've got the outfielder of the future, and then you've got a movable chip with 2 years of club control in Haniger, but he's their really only consistent offensive threat, and you're in contention to end the longest playoff drought in North American sports. I mean, they're in a really weird spot. Like, I don't think they have enough to get over the hump and get to the postseason, but I can't see them being in a position where they say, it's still a lot of ground to make up, and the best thing we can do is trade away our best player to try to become better as a whole. They're just such a strange spot because it is, it's a lot of ground to make up. It really is. And as you mentioned, they've done it, despite a horrid run differential. It's crazy because they need middle infield help and they need starting pitching. And the only way they're going to get that is by moving the one guy that they probably can't move.
So just play better down the stretch and you're in.
I guess, yeah.
All right. In the East, Boston continues to lead. This is a great story. They're 2 games ahead of Tampa, and then there's New York. They're 9 games back. Yankees fans are jumping off cliffs. Fire this guy, fire that guy, tear the place down, the whole 9 yards. But the Yankees sit at 52-47. What does Boston do, and what does New York do?
I think the Red Sox tried to go out and bring Anthony Rizzo back, the team that drafted him. I think there's the potential they have a reunion with Craig Kimbrell. I think they are in a really interesting spot. They could go out and get Jonathan Scope from the Tigers, a guy who brings versatility and power. They just have so many options. But the Yankees, to me, they've got to swing for the fences here. And I think that because of the fact that, it seems weird to say, but I sort of feel like Boone's playing for his job right now. I mean, this team had such sky-high expectations, and there's Tampa still, 7 games ahead of them in the standings. You're fighting to stay in the wild card mix. You got a +6 run differential when you've got those kind of bats they have. I mean, to me, they're just in disarray, and I don't know that enough can be done in the next 27 hours to fix that.
Yeah, I actually just pulled up the wild card standings comparatively, the American League and the National League, and you've got 5, 6 teams, 7 teams within 5 games in the American League, and you've got 2 within 5 games in the National League. The Dodgers and the Padres out there seemingly separating themselves from everybody else. Yeah. So we've talked about Seattle, we've talked about New York, but then you've got the Blue Jays, you've got Oakland, Tampa. Here's the thing, Tampa never gets notoriety in this conversation. It's always about Boston and New York, especially when they're both in contention. But Tampa's going, hello, we have better starting pitching than all of you. What about them?
And they have Nelson, and they have Nelson Cruz.
Yes, and they have Nelson Cruz. That's right.
That was the move, right? I mean, we think so long and hard about them just trying to get by and skimping, and you obviously go out and get a guy who's not, you don't have any long-term commitment to. But to me, that's a power move, right? I mean, if you're trying to chase down the Red Sox and trying to get back to the World Series, I mean, I think that maybe they still don't know if Tyler Glasnow is going to be able to contribute the rest of the season, right? So I think they still need to do something in terms of trying to shore up that starting pitching. But man, to go out and get an offensive piece like that, I mean, that is an anti-Rays move, and I love to see the fact that they pulled it off.
Is there a better sports town in America right now than Tampa, or a more successful one?
I mean, if not for the Dodgers, if you talk about title town, right? I mean, you have the Lightning, you'd have the Bucks, and obviously the Rays still winning the American League. So yeah, they're riding high in Southern Florida right now.
I mean, how much of this has to do with Tom Brady? Didn't the Bruins win a couple championships when he was up there?
Yeah,
the Red Sox certainly did.
Yeah. There wasn't Big Papi had nothing. It was all Tom Brady.
Maybe the Falcons need to sign Tom Brady.
There you go. I'll pass down that information. We'll see if we can make it happen.
All right, Cory McCartney, 12:23 on this Wednesday afternoon. Okay, so let's talk about Kumar Rocker. There's a report out there, Cory, that Kumar Rocker and the Mets may be at odds a little bit here. There's essentially a handshake agreement on a $6 million signing bonus based on the most recent Major League Baseball draft where the Mets selected the Vanderbilt right-hander. But as most, I think, people know, when you get drafted, you've got to go through a bunch of medical tests and procedures and things like that. And his physical is showing that maybe there are some issues there with an elbow or something in his arm. And he's saying, no, I'm fine. And here's why. So I don't know how that part works itself out, but there essentially are 3 options, right? The Mets either, okay, we're going to give you the $6 million. No, we're going to give you this number, or he just doesn't sign and goes back to Vanderbilt. So what are you hearing on that? What do you think is the most likely situation?
I think they find a way to make this work, right? I mean, but the Mets just mishandled this so much. I mean, think about, having a little over $9 million to spend over, the first 10 rounds, and you got a pick that has a $4.74 million slot, and they basically, they necessitated saving money elsewhere to the fact that, I think they put themselves in a really weird position. I mean, you don't know the complete medical histories of these guys until you get them, right? I mean, I think that's one of the weird things about the MLB draft, the fact that these guys are playing in the midst of the draft. So, it's to me that I think he ultimately finds a way to get this done, but it's a weird start to things for sure for both sides.
Is it bad enough? Whatever it is, whatever the issue might be, there's been talk of maybe Rocker making a postseason appearance or a run to the postseason for the Mets. Can that happen?
I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, if you're to the point where you're scrounging for starting pitching and even pitching in general, I mean, we've seen this guy perform at an extreme high level. I think the idea that these guys aren't as ready as they were 4 or 5 years ago is gone. I think think about Bob Horner. I mean, this is a guy that from Arizona State never played in the minors and went straight to the Braves, and it's happened. But I think the fact that you're talking about a high level arm contributing in small ways, I don't think that's completely out the window.
No, not at all. There's so many examples of that, and a lot of them are coming out of this area, the Southeast. A lot of SEC guys. I mean, there's other examples clearly from around the country, but I mean, you just look at the number of SEC arms out there. This is where the power arms are, is what I'm saying. It's not just an SEC thing. This is where they're going to school, and then they're they're in the big leagues for Casey Mize, who went to Auburn, guys like that. So, all right. On that note, though, with the Braves, based on their recent draft, anything of note lately? Guys who have signed, who haven't signed. What are you hearing on their class?
Yeah, I mean, we actually I think they've signed 10 of their picks to this point. So still a little bit of work to do. Obviously, you got the high end there. They got the first round pick out of Wake Forest signed. So I think they're feeling pretty good about stuff. Remember that they got themselves in a situation with a kid that they had signed, drafted in the first round 2 years ago, and ended up going to Korea. So I think they're feeling good about things, just as they know that their first round pick is staying put in the organization.
This might be kind of a difficult question, Corey. I know we got to let you run here just a second, but anybody that was in that class that seemingly would fill the role of a potential trade name, basically somebody who would replace somebody who might be on the trading block for a star as the deadline approaches. See what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm asking about their farm. I'm asking about their farm system and who's available to move in order to bolster this year's roster, and maybe where they drafted somebody who's like, we're going to probably end up moving this guy, and this guy will just step right in for him.
Yeah, I think it's the starting pitching, right? I mean, I think there's just so many guys that the Braves have in that organization. If they're gonna, they for the longest time, would tell us they build that prospect capital, and they hadn't been willing to move that to make the team better. And I think ultimately to their detriment, they'd only moved 2 guys, Joey Wentz and Colby Allard, that were really the top end of that of those arms that they had gotten. So, I think as much as Kyle Muller has been great, I think what happens with how comfortable they feel with Huascar Ynoa is, does he become someone, I'm not saying that they trade Kyle Muller in the next 24 hours, but I say, does he somebody that they potentially long-term, look at as a movable piece, because they have so many arms that eventually they're going to get a glimpse in somebody, and you've got to ultimately move them when they still have value. So I've been waiting for them to do this for years, and we'll see if they're ultimately able to do it or willing to do it with any of these high-end arms.
What about all those young stud catchers they've got in the organization? Holding on to all those guys?
Yeah. I mean, Shane Langoliers is obviously the one that they're really high on. I think the hope is that you go into next year, now that you've had, William Contreras has had a taste, that you can take him and have Shea Langoliers and him potentially, next year be that tandem behind the plate for you, because they had actually went on a run. When I mentioned Colby Allard, they had taken, Brett Cumberland and a number of, high end draft picks for catchers in that same time period. But Shane Langoliers is the guy. I mean, you're talking about a 1.84 average pop time. You're talking about JT Realmuto average pop time. This guy is legit defensively. So I think, and the bat's progressing. So he's the one I think to watch behind the plate.
Is the rivalry between Lake Point and East Cobb real?
I don't know.
Is that a real rivalry? Yeah. Who has the better baseball, Lake Point?
Ooh. I know. Well, we have there's just teams. This is basically like houses tournaments, right? Like they have their own teams.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, they do.
It's like it's this massive facility. They use it for hoops.
Yeah.
They use it for volleyball. They use it for baseball. And by the way, I like the Shaw Sports shout out there, because you've seen games on fields that Shaw Turf has installed, and you probably haven't even known it, like the World Series last year. So
yeah,
my buddy runs that division of Shaw Sports.
Well, that's great.
Well, what is the guy? What's the guy's name that runs the East Cobb program?
Mr. Cobb.
No. You know who I'm talking about. His name's escaped me. You've seen him 1,000 times. Everybody has.
Yeah, we actually did when I was at Fox Sports. We did one of those driven series on East Cobb, and they followed him around for days. I can't even remember.
Yeah, I remember that.
So bad that I'm blanking on him. Yeah.
So when I was coaching travel baseball, we beat his 16U team, the Astros, in Columbia, and we were about to throw a guy who Corey. This has been 10 years ago, or somewhere around there, 10 or 11 years, 10 years ago probably. And we were about to throw a guy who was somewhere in the mid 80s, which was, 16U, that's pretty good. But 16U against the East Cobb Astros, that's BP. And so I looked down and I said, this kid who hadn't probably thrown in 2 weeks. I mean, he'd thrown, but not in a game. He was a lefty who, probably couldn't break a plane of glass. And I just went to him. I said, hey, by the way, you're going to start today. And he didn't even know who he was pitching against. He was like, all right, that sounds good. Then we beat him 2-1. And I remember after the game, that guy, I forget his name, he wouldn't shake my hand because I threw this lefty who literally was throwing under bat speed. It was brutal. And he wouldn't shake my hand. And I just looked at him. I said, okay. And he said, well, we came over here to play baseball. And I said, well, coach, in baseball, you got to hit soft throwing left-handers too,
That's fantastic.
True. The only time I've ever talked to him, turned around and walked away.
There you go.
But 1-0, baby. Anyway, all right. Well, Corey, we really appreciate the report, and we'll keep our eyes on the trade deadline. Enjoy the rest of the week out there. Really appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Thank you.
There you go, Cory McCartney over there in hot Atlanta. Seriously, he was sweating on the camera. All right, so we're going to go from that beautiful background to J.C. Shurburtt's house in Chicago, Illinois. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
For Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with 0 down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car and get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump? Strike two! If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with 0 down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right, local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
Your online radio. The new online radio that makes you happy.
Like a honeybee,
my screen door. I got a little buzz in my head. So cause we come from a long line of sinners like me.
You were listening to the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online.
Don't cry for me when I'm gone. Just put a quarter in the jukebox and sing me back home.
This is one intro I'll never interrupt. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, StokesVW.com. It is a really nasty day outside here in the low country. It was beautiful and warm over there in hot Atlanta, Georgia, and now it's dark in JC Shurburtt's house in Chicago, Illinois. Hey, JC.
Yeah, sorry about the darkness. I'm flying to Myrtle Beach on Saturday.
All right.
Speaking of darkness,
I don't want any bad weather coming in, man. Because when you fly into that airport, there's two ways you come in, and you can come in from the land, and that's fine. But then you can come in off the ocean, and I'm always worried the plane's going to go down, and I'm going to get eaten by a shark or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little concerned if the weather's bad. Just pray for me that that it's all good weather-wise Saturday.
Well, yeah, so it's bad weather today, so you'll be fine by then, assuming nothing else is here.
I've checked the forecast. I'm a little iffy, so I don't know. But anyway.
Well, it's the coast. You don't ever know on the coast, man. That's no different from Chicago. I mean, you got the wind coming off the lake up there,
Yeah, wind comes off the lake, and it'll be 90 degrees 1 minute, and next minute it's 70 and foggy, and I saw a shooting star last night. I don't think that's weather. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
Shooting stars aren't weather. It's more.
You're talking about, you are in Chicago, so you're talking about an actual star that was going through the sky, right?
Yeah, the like you've seen The More You Know.
Yeah.
That I saw one of those in the sky last night.
Okay. I just want to clarify the shooting part of that.
Yeah, and I freaked out a little bit because I read a story the other day. There's a comet that's 124 miles wide entering our solar system, and I looked up and saw it's like everybody's lying to us, and all that conspiracy theory for a split second.
Yeah, we'll be okay. Hey, Blind Squirrel Sports, check this out. So we're going from Atlanta. I see his comment from Atlanta to Chicago, and then after this, we're going to Austin, Texas. Yeah, this is a nationwide program.
Because the SEC,
a new SEC city out there in Cockfather land. Yeah,
if this keeps up, you'll be probably in an SEC town yourself there.
Northwestern's a tremendous fit for this program.
Absolutely. Yeah,
actually, because they added Missouri, I mean, a lot of people don't understand this. University of Illinois is nowhere near Chicago. It's out in the what we call the southern part of the state, and people in Champaign, Urbana talk like this. They're like, "Hey, y'all," and they call it Little Egypt and all. So Illinois would actually probably fit in the SEC if they ever wanted to invite them.
Yeah, at least the southern part of Illinois.
Yeah, well, that's where University of Illinois is in the middle towards the south. This state is basically suburbs of St. Louis, Chicagoland, and corn.
Yeah, I've heard that. I really have heard that. Seriously. Yeah. My cousin, when he was younger, went up there and lived with his dad in Illinois. He said, dude, Chicago and then the rest of Illinois are two totally different things.
I mean, dude, when you're in the southern part of the state, you have to drive into Missouri or Kentucky to go to the city. I mean, it's like, oh man.
Kentucky.
All
right, JC, let's get right to it. We haven't talked to you much, so I'm sure you've probably heard that Oklahoma and Texas are going to join the SEC. If not, head to thebigspur.com. They've got some columns and things like that about this. So I'm going to ask you from the South Carolina side, because you cover the Gamecocks for the Big Spur. What does this mean for the Gamecocks?
People start panicking whenever they hear this. And right now, I think when you're at the beginning of a build and you got a new coach and all that, and you're like, well, you're kind of shooting for 6-6 in a bowl. And then you start thinking about, well, gosh, you don't need to make the schedule any tougher. And then you're like, well, the number 4 and number 6 most winning programs in football are coming in. You probably initially panic a little bit. And I get that, but the bottom line is this: there is a way, and I'm not blowing sunshine and rainbows here. There is a way this could be very negative for South Carolina. If you think about it in terms of South Carolina's goal right now is to get back over some of these teams in the East and eventually contend with Georgia and maybe Florida to win the division and go to Atlanta. That's been the goal since 2010 when they broke through, and that's still kind of the goal. I mean, that win the SEC East. Being in the SEC East as it stands now makes the South Carolina job better than it would be if it were somewhere else where it was, it's already kind of a mission impossible, but it would be a mission impossible if they were in the West, like Arkansas and those guys. So initially, everybody on the internet and all their genius and some of the talking heads in the media that thought about 5 seconds on this, and one of them even said, I only thought about 5 seconds on this. They just immediately move Alabama and Auburn to the east, and Missouri, Texas, Texas A&M, or Missouri, Texas, and Oklahoma are going west. Period. Well, the same people said Texas and Missouri were going west last time. That whoever wrote that doesn't really understand how politicking in the SEC works, because not only would South Carolina flip about that, Georgia would flip out about that, Florida would flip out about that, Tennessee would just be like, "Oh man, we need to." Can we join the ACC? Kentucky, the only school in the East right now that would be happy about that would be Missouri. And then I think a lot of Auburn people would like to come east because they're tired of being in the West too and getting their brains beat in. Or not getting, they don't get their brains, it's a struggle. If Auburn had been in the East all these years, they'd have probably won it a whole lot, And so that's the initial thing, because everybody, these people that want to jump to conclusions that are also tweeting about 2014 conferences and all that, it's just dumb. Here's what they're going to happen. Panic.
Yeah.
Now, that said, I can't rule that out. And there are some people that are connected that believe that's how it would work. 9 conference games, all that. You keep all the traditional rivalries intact. But what I've been told by other people is when you talk about these traditional rivalries, the only one really they want to save is Georgia and Auburn, which they played continuously for years. You're probably going to have at least one permanent opponent that's not in your pod or division. Nobody wants to give up the Alabama-LSU game. Nobody wants to give up the TV draw of Alabama playing Texas and Oklahoma and Texas A&M. Right. Alabama doesn't want to switch divisions. They're not looking for an easier path. Look at how they schedule. They're bored. They're looking forward to going to Austin and all that stuff. And so at first I heard, well, they may just rename the divisions, hopefully not leaders and legends, and move the Mississippis over. And if you're a Gamecock fan, you're like, great. Because those are programs, I think they're good and they're interesting, and Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin are doing well and they have talent, but those are programs that are kind of on equal footing with South Carolina.
They're comparable.
At the very least, and in a lot of years, the Gamecocks are significantly better. I mean, look at the Gamecocks' record against those two schools,
overall it's been
for the last while, And so, you look at that and you're like, take it. Well, life can't be that too good in Gamecock. Can't be that good in Gamecock country, right? It can't be, we can't have nice things for a while. So everybody's thrown around this pod system. I think for the SEC and for South Carolina, the pod system is great because it's kind of like lottery balls, and you kind of shake it up. So you're not sitting there going, well, we've got this slow climb up a mountain to try to catch Alabama, or we're never getting to the championship game, which is, ask everybody in the West how hard that is. And not only that, we have to get over Georgia and Auburn and Florida, and that's four. You're like, wow, you got a hard ceiling on that division. Whereas a lot of the pod models are like, they really shake it up. I mean, you're going to end up playing every school during a kid's 4-year career, which is what everybody's been complaining about. Dan Mullen, everybody else, with a 4-pod system and a 9-game schedule. And so, look, it's never going to be easy. Yes, Texas and Oklahoma could cycle both on the schedule at the same time at some point, sometime. But in a 14 pod with Georgia, Florida, and Kentucky, if you're South Carolina, I think, heck, those are the 3 teams we definitely have to play every year. Then you're going to have a permanent opponent from everywhere else, which – if they're looking to do the traditional rivals, Texas A&M's probably coming off, right, as a permanent. So maybe you get Vandy or even Tennessee. I don't know. But that's more of or Missouri, since there's a trophy. That's more acceptable, And then, hey, look, some years are going to be paired with the Texas and Oklahoma pod, and some years you're going to be paired with other pods. And some years, I don't know exactly how they'll do it, but the pod system that like completely rotates over and over with sort of an NFL model where, how the AFC East plays the NFC West some years, something like that, I think not only is good for South Carolina because you shake it up, it's good for the fans because they're going different places and getting a little variety. It's good for the SEC because you get all these neat matchups that, we're sitting there. It'll be 2024 the next time as it's scheduled now. South Carolina goes to Tuscaloosa. They went in 2009. And
I was about to say.
That stadium's changed a whole lot. So they've added some statues and all that stuff, and it makes it, it's going to be tough, but the SEC is tough anyway. It makes it more open that's a more open plan. And then you just never know, some years you're going to have if you're South Carolina, you're going to have a really good team. You're going to go 7-5 because your draws from the pod suck. Mm-hmm. Some years you're going to have a team that maybe you didn't think was going to be good. And you're going to go 10-2 and have a chance to get to Atlanta or the playoff because, hey, LSU's, if your LSU's down, and the other 3 opponents are Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and they're kind of down too. So you sweep those guys, and you're going to be up. And I think that's much more fair than to continue to bury, your South Carolinas, your Arkansas, your Mississippi schools. Texas is going to be buried for a little while, mark my word. Missouri, whoever. Under okay, not only do you have to beat these guys, you got to beat Alabama and Auburn now too. That's crappy, and I think that would be fundamentally unfair to do that. So my hope is, and what I understand is, it's going to be a pod system, and it's going to solve, a lot of the scheduling complaints people have around the SEC. Yeah. I think that'll be good for South Carolina.
That's been one of my complaints for years is the scheduling, philosophy that this league carries. I've thought for a long time that they should go to 9 games. Darren, you and I have had this conversation 1,000 times. This would probably force this. I think, and let's not make this part of the conversation specific to South Carolina. Let's make this part of the conversation more general for a group of similar programs, football speaking. South Carolina, Tennessee, got bad news for Vols fans, although some of you still think that it's 1998. It is not. Missouri, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Kentucky. Arkansas's had a tough go of it, but I would throw Arkansas in here. What I would call middle class of the league. And then from here, during the James Franklin years and maybe 1 or 2 since then, you could probably put Vanderbilt in that conversation as well. But definitely what I would say the middle class, JC. What can mitigate those fears? Because all of these programs have lived in, for the most part, mediocrity, right? I mean, they've had good years and bad years. Carolina had a great run. Mississippi State And Ole Miss back in 2014 was something special to watch.
They'd have been in the playoff, yeah.
Ole Miss or Missouri, since they've been in the league, they've had some special years, especially early on there under Gary Pinkel. So they've all had their moments. So for the fans, what mitigates the fears of having to climb past more elite programs to accomplish or achieve something? And I guess what I'm asking by that is it the pod system and the rotation? Is it more the playoff and, hey, it's going to be a 12-team playoff, which means you could actually go 9-3 and still get in there, and actually by virtue of playing a more difficult schedule, that would help you? Is it another expansion? Do they relook at this and say, well, maybe we should go to 16 teams now because the SEC might get half the field in every year by adding these two programs? What can mitigate those fears of middle-class programs?
I have to say the pods are the answer, and an extreme rotating schedule. Like there are pod models out there where you're going to play every single SEC school over a 4-year period. And I think there's some really stupid ideas too for those reasons. I think it's a stupid idea just to send Alabama and Auburn to the East and say, all right, you guys got to climb this mountain and you're going to have to play all these teams every year and that type of thing. That's basically just saying, look, we don't really care about your South Carolinas and Tennessees of the world anymore. We're just going to go do our thing. I think it's equally stupid for some of these people that are like, you want to do, let's just do like the ACC did last year and all 16 teams, and then the top 2 go to the thing. No, that worked in the Big 12. During COVID with Notre Dame coming in, there's not a lot of time to sit there and do divisions and stuff. So I understand why the ACC did it last year. And really, you could have predicted the top 2 teams at the beginning. They weren't really contenders. The SEC most years will have 4 or 5 really good teams. So, and so 1 through 16, look, you want to play 15 regular season games and everybody plays everybody? Yeah, we'll find out who the top 2 are and go. But if you do it like that, a lot of times it's going to be the luck of the draw with your schedule. And that's, that's a fact of life in a conference with 16 teams in it. I think 4 pods of 4 with constant rotation, everything's probably going to equal out in the end. And yeah, you're going to get an unfortunate draw some years. Even if you're LSU or Texas A&M or whoever, there's going to be some years you go, my goodness, But that's the way life is in the SEC right now anyway. And the reason I would go to 4 instead of the division thing is, every year you've got a different challenge. And every year, no matter, depending on what pod you're matched up against, okay, well, we've got to be the best in our pod and beat those 3 teams. But, these are the 4 teams we got to go get for this 2-year period. You could even rotate it, pod A plays D for 2 years, home and home, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's fair because, at the end of the day, it's all going to equal out. Everybody's got a shot. And you're not sitting there going, okay, we're going to put another roadblock right in front of you. You're going to have to play your way in. Yeah. You're going to have to win football games, but you're not sitting there going, well, dadgummit, this is the year we finally beat Alabama. But then Auburn and Georgia had historically good teams, blah, 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 and you're still out of the playoff, 12-team playoff or whatever. So I think a pod system combined with the 12-team playoff actually opens it up quite nicely. I think when you go to 16, 8-team divisions get a little much. 7 teams, you can still live with it. 8 gets a little bit much. And if you're talking about locking in a schedule, with 7 permanent, if you're going to have permanent opponents, even if you play 9, you're still only rotating 1 opponent, and
yeah, it's not good.
And I think that, and I think too, with the permanent opponent thing, they're going to want to have some rivalries that they keep. And I don't know whether or not, in Georgia, Auburn will be one. LSU, Alabama will be another. Nobody thinks about that. Maybe they group them in a pod, or maybe they say you're going to have 1 permanent opponent, that type of thing. But I think 9 games, and look, as a Gamecock person, my favorite plan would probably be send the Mississippi's east and move Missouri to the west, and away we go. But, I was like, that's a more climbable mountain. But is that fair to everybody else? No. So I think 4-4-4-4, a big rotation to where everybody plays everybody over a 4-year period, and it becomes exciting. I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you're excited about going to Norman, Oklahoma. You're excited about going out to Austin. Keith's going to have a party for everybody. I mean, it'll be great. But and I am too. And you're also excited that, hey, you may get to go, to Oxford more often, or Tuscaloosa, or Fayetteville, or wherever. Rather than hey, who's going to A&M this year? Well, I've been the last 3. That kind of thing. So I think that's best for the fans, that show up for the games. I think it's great for TV. I think it adds drama. So after thinking about this, because that's always your initial concern, because like I said, the internet brigade's like, this is how it's gonna be, blah, 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 Yeah. And you're like, no, so I think after considering all options from, not only a South Carolina standpoint, but for what's good for the league, I think that pod system would be great.
16, are they done for now, or do we hear about the potential to add more before this conversation is over? I'm not talking about in 5 years. I'm talking about right now. Is expansion done in the SEC, or are they actively maybe searching for another couple of programs?
I'd be surprised if it weren't done. Just because, and look, we're in a changing landscape and all that. But I mean, of course, from a South Carolina standpoint, everybody's, Clemson. And, quite frankly, if you're going to add teams in the East, Clemson and Florida State would be great. I just don't know that would happen.
Why, if you're Clemson, this is the $1 million question, but I think it's got a pretty easy answer. And the answer, in my opinion, is there's no reason. Why would you leave the ACC? You have the path of least resistance right now to the top of the college football world.
No, there's no way I'd leave. I mean, but Oklahoma left. But Oklahoma, I think, has been wanting to go to the SEC for a long time. I think that they kind of fancy themselves as a program that belongs in the Southeastern Conference. I think that Texas, all my years of covering recruiting, I know a lot of Texas people. Their fan base is as SEC as it gets. People think it's a wine and cheese crowd. It's not. Austin is kind of a wine and cheese environment, but their crowd care. Their fans come from all over Texas, so they care. They love their school, that kind of thing. They're an SEC fan base, but I've always been told they'd never do it. I think for a while they fancied themselves as the next Notre Dame. And they go independent before they do that, or they join the Pac-12 because of academics, all this horse crap, basically. And that changed, obviously, within the past year. And I think a big part of it is, and people talk about NIL, and that's important too. But, I don't think a lot of folks realize, because I also hear this argument. Why would they expand into, against Clemson? Why would they want another team in South Carolina? They've got a team and they got the cable market. The cable market's not as important anymore. It's about brands, building huge audiences, and it's about streaming, which is the future. Amazon paid $1 billion to stream the NFL. That's not cheap. That's a lot of money. And with Disney involved in streaming now, with ESPN and stuff, you bet your butt they're going after content, and they're going to pay top dollar for it. And so it's not necessarily like, if this were today, I don't think the Big Ten adds Rutgers and Maryland. I think they go and, try to poach somebody with a little more panache. So that's kind of the deal there. But it's, are they done? That was the original question. I believe they are, but I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. They've done a good job, Greg Sankey in particular,
wow,
of keeping all this quiet.
Amazing.
The expansion and all that. But I know enough people around Clemson to know, and of course I don't think anybody around Texas and Oklahoma knew about this. Institutionally, they don't want any part of the SEC. They never have. They never will. They're the king of the ACC, and it's not just that. They're a charter member of that league. They've been in it for years. And if you look at it, it's not like Clemson's in the Big 12, where that league's looking at like instead of 37 million, 9. You know, the ACC does have some cards to play with Notre Dame, maybe a West Virginia, that kind of thing. And so I would be very, very surprised if there were, if there were any further expansion, first and foremost, because I do believe if they went to 18, Clemson and Florida State would be the two they'd probably pursue. But if Clemson goes anywhere and Florida, they'll know about FSU. They need the money. But Clemson's got plenty of money, and they're in a good situation. I think their future and the ACC's future is going to be contingent on Notre Dame and their decision. And then, who do you add as 16? Maybe you come off since you added Louisville after preaching academics all these years, maybe you kind of get off your high horse and add West Virginia, which I think would be great. We'll talk about couches.
The academics conversation doesn't hold 1 ounce of water anymore. I'm so sick of – I'm not talking about you.
Yeah,
but people would say that. Some of these ACC people, well, we want you to be academically this, that, and the other. Get that crap out of here. The TV people don't care about that crap. They care about what you just said about.
You added the university – in a panic after Maryland left, you added the University of Louisville.
Yeah. They don't care.
That's not
money.
That's a big, I think it's a big commuter school. It's not even it's like USC upstate.
Let me ask you this real quick because we got to get to a break here. But let me ask you this. If it's about content and brands and things like that, Clemson clearly is a brand, one of the great brands in the sport now. Is it there an argument though that even though they've had some tough years, I mean, Florida State's had tough years, that Miami's brand is as big, if not bigger, than the Noles?
I'll say this, though, about Clemson's brand. It makes, just to finish on what JC said, it makes all the sense in the world to me that Clemson, if there are more additions and if more things change, would join the SEC. It makes all the sense in the world. Money, competition, be in the best league makes all the sense in the world, but the media rights, and that's just something that just hasn't been brought up yet. It's a lot harder to get out of the ACC ones right now. They run into like 36, I think.
But I'll say this: they signed that deal, and it could be disastrous for them because they're locked in.
Yep,
they can't renegotiate without expansion, and that brings me back to West Virginia. They poo-pooed all over West Virginia. They had to beg them to take Virginia Tech whenever back in the mid-2000s because they're academic snobs. And I'm with you, JB. I think that's moronic. It has nothing to do with college football. I think she thought this is just audio and doesn't understand I'm on video here, but that's all right. It had nothing to do with college football, but now we're in a different landscape, and to me, West Virginia always got screwed on all of this because they don't belong in the Big 12. Obviously, they lost big heated rivalries with Virginia Tech and Pitt, the backyard brawl, and then they don't like University of Virginia very much at West Virginia either. I mean, then they have Syracuse, Boston College, who they used to play, Miami, who they used to play. It just makes all the sense in the world to take them. And they're I think I was looking at the top teams for wins. They're like top 30 in wins all time. So, I think you need to take the Mountaineers if you can get Notre Dame. If not, you'd have to. I would make them Notre Dame give me a hard no before I do it. But here's why the ACC. And I saw another something stupid today about the ACC adding Oregon. Come on, man. You mentioned the TV deal, and you're right, Darren, but what you're not thinking about here, or maybe you have thought about it, is you're locked into that for 16 years, and everybody else is renegotiating because they're adding teams, and you're 30-something million a year is great right now, but when the folks down the road are making 80, 90, 100, and you're still locked in because you signed that deal and nothing's changed, that may – persuade the ACC to act. It's kind of crazy because I think, the Big Ten's rights are up soon. Pac-12's rights are up soon. SEC's are up soon.
Yep.
The ACC almost at this point needs to act with more of a sense of urgency to make some changes than really any other league outside of the Big 12.
Because if they add, I believe they can get back to the negotiating table with their contract.
They can.
They
can.
So that's that. Yes.
Especially if you add Notre Dame. I mean, you add Notre Dame and West Virginia to that league.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
I think if you added Notre Dame and West Virginia, Texas people wouldn't view it this way at all. But and the brands are different. Notre Dame is a brand, and Texas and Notre Dame are the two biggest brands in Oklahoma, then West Virginia. But from a football standpoint, you've absolutely matched what the SEC just did. Texas and West Virginia, they're nothing different between those two programs over the last decade or so.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. No difference at all. And here's an outside the box thing, because I know we got to get to a break. We can talk about it on the other side. If Notre Dame is a hard no, number one, after 2036, when all this is over, I'm kicking them out of the basketball league. I'm saying no, bye. This was not how this was supposed to work. Number two, I'm playing the long game. And John Swofford's not there anymore. This new guy used to be up here at Northwestern. I don't know much about him, Jim Phillips. I'm adding UCF to the conference. And I'm going to tell you why. Because their brand is not strong. It's an emerging brand. It would be like getting Facebook on board in your stock portfolio in like 07-ish, that kind of thing. Since we're adding commuter schools anyway, and you added Louisville, UCF, 60,000 students. Do you know how many alumni that's going to be here in a couple of years? They fill up a brand new stadium that they built all the time. It's in Florida in a TV market, so you still get the TV, and you basically own the state of Florida then, with the exception of the Gators. And you get a football and basketball program that's ready to go take that next step and compete. And if you're looking to build eyeballs and numbers, there's going to be in 10 years, there's going to be a lot of UCF fans, man. They haven't been playing football since 96, but that school is huge, and they put the money into it. And their fans are passionate. One day I called them the Golden Knights, right? And they dropped the Golden 4 years ago. I got all kinds of nasty comments on Twitter, and you don't care about UCF. I'm like, I don't really. You claimed a national championship you didn't deserve, but right. If I'm the ACC, and that's just strictly my opinion, I've heard no scoop, and Notre Dame is a hard no. I'm like, I'm going to go get somebody that's going to be one of the best brands in college sports in 5 to 10 years, simply because of numbers, alumni, interest, passion, market, all that. And I'm going to get the UCF Knights, not Golden Knights, to join my league.
107 on a Wednesday afternoon. Generally, I would say let's just follow off the break. But, JC, I've been dealing with a horrible sinus infection over the last few days, so I need it. So we're going to hit a quick timeout. The national anthem, final 20 minutes with JC Shurburtt, right here on the JB and Goldwater Show. Up next.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston. Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Lowcountry. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Flamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right. 1:11 on a Wednesday afternoon. July the 28th is the final week of the month of July. Next week, college football practice will commence across America. The JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, JB Darren, and JC Shurburtt with thebigspur.com. Make sure you follow us on social media at JB and Goldwater. And if you're not following Darren and I individually, you should do that on Twitter at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. Keith Allsep ahead at about 1:30 or so. So another 20 minutes with JC Shurburtt. All right, JC, we're going to leave the expansion stuff behind. We've spent 5 hours on that this week. Let's talk football. You want to talk football, like the sport, the players, the thing that they hand off and throw, those type conversations. Carolina next Friday, I believe. We don't have the official schedule yet from Steve Fink, but it looks like the end of next week, Gamecocks will have their first practice of the fall, and then we'll be rolling right along until September the 4th, and Eastern Illinois, of course, coming to Williams-Brice Stadium that Saturday for the first game of the Shane Beamer era. JC, one of the, we're starting to get into that, players to watch. We're starting to see some of these guys after their summer workouts, what they look like from a developmental standpoint. TheBigSpur.com certainly has write-ups on a lot of these guys, Luke Doty, and what he's been able to accomplish this summer. But I want to talk about it from some of these dudes from the standpoint of not what we've already seen and what we're expecting, the popular names like Kevin Harrison, Luke Doty, and JJ Ningbare. I want to talk about the guys that after maybe week 2, we're going to go, yeah, that guy's pretty damn good. Or you know what I mean? The guys that aren't getting the credit just yet. So if I said JC Shurburtt, give me 3 names to watch to start the season for the South Carolina defense, who would those 3 names be?
Shoe buddy. Okay, guy that nobody's talking about. I'm gonna go with Tonka Hemingway because he's kind of the guy that nobody ever talks about. He was pretty dang good last year, and he's gonna move inside, outside. I know they're really high on Jabari Ellis, but I would go with Hemingway if you're talking about that. At linebacker, I'll give you all 3 levels here. Linebacker, I'm probably going with Debo Williams. And I know everybody on the internet likes Debo because they know who he is because he's all over the internet and he's got really good film. He puts his, as Will Muschamp used to say, puts his face in the fan and likes it. But I just think he's going to be quicker, to kind of get ready to roll for a freshman. And then in the secondary, a guy I heard some things about that were good, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it since he's a Spartanburg County guy, is Marcellus Dial. I think coming out of spring, everybody's like, well, Marcellus is probably going to start. And then you sort of go get Kayron Prunty, who's a freshman All-American, and, you start thinking about Cam Smith at the other corner. Where's Dial going to play? I think for sure that, he's going to play somewhere. And he could surprise as we go through this fall and they put the secondary together. So that's defensively my guys, if you want to. Just kind of looking for guys to watch.
Who's the dude that is like, okay, put JJ Enigbari on the side of this conversation. We all know in order for this defense to have a turnaround, they were atrocious last year. Let's just call it what it is. It was terrible. So we all know that JJ Enigbari, potentially an All-American. He's a potential All-American at South Carolina, another defensive end, maybe to add to that long list. Put him aside because it's known. Who can you just not wait to watch? And I'm going to throw my name out there first, and it's Jordan Birch. JC, this kid's got everything you possibly can imagine to be a successful football player. There's nothing when I look at him that says, yeah, maybe he was a little overrated. I truly believe, based on what I've heard and with what my eyes have seen, that after week 2 or week 3, we're going to be talking about Jordan Birch as much as anybody.
Yeah, and here's the thing, too. He may not start, and I'll tell you why, because Aaron Sterling's still on the roster. And I know Mike Peterson loves Aaron Sterling, and a lot of times, when you have a talented young player like Birch, you use it as sort of a carrot. Here's my carrot. Like they did with Clowney, his freshman year. He played a whole lot, but, they didn't do it. And Birch didn't really have a freshman year last year, and he played in some games. But, there were, with the younger guys on the D line last year, and then some guys got hurt, there were a lot of COVID issues. There were 3 guys the week of the LSU game. I just found this out this week that just, decided they weren't going to play, And I was like, well, and I say all that to say this. Here's what should give Gamecock fans hope. Yes, last year was 2-8. But number one, it was 2-8 against an all-SEC schedule. So that's number one. So it was really like a 5-7. Number two, there were so much that went on behind the scenes last year, strictly because of COVID and the protocols and the grind, and they had to practice for 2 months before they could play, and then they played, and just all this crap. And then the coach gets fired. I mean, it's surprising the Gamecocks didn't have more attrition than they did, just to be honest, with now knowing how things went down. And unfortunately, like a lot of things with Will Muschamp, his coaching career at South Carolina and Florida, there were things, it was beyond his control. I mean, because it was the pandemic and all that good stuff. So, we really didn't get a chance to see, Jordan Birch and, some of these people that think that if you're a 5-star, you should step in like LeBron James and dominate right away. That's not how football works. I know that everybody watched Trevor Lawrence, and they're like, it even took Trevor 3 games to get in. And Trevor's not a guy that's like your normal guy. I mean, most of the time, guys have to develop. Clowney, like I said, wasn't even a starter his freshman year. So I'll go there with Birch. I'm looking forward to this Jordan Strong kid from Georgia State too. Mm-hmm. Didn't get a lot of – and some of the transfers did not get a lot of buzz in the spring. Because Strawn was out the whole spring. Amarian Brown from Georgia Tech, wide receiver, was kind of hit or miss. I saw Derek Moore tweet a picture of Amarian the other day. It looks like he's had a really good summer in the weight room, and he's a 4-3-4 guy, that can take the top off of defense. So I'm looking forward to seeing all those guys. And I'll say this too. I think that E.J. Jenkins just keep an eye on him. Okay,
yeah.
that's all I'm going to say. And I know he's playing some tight end. He's listed at receiver on the roster. And my hope is, because this team desperately needs an outside threat. My hope is that he's all of the above and helps them on the outside, but also matched up against linebackers and things like that. Because, if it's not him, somebody's got to emerge on the outside. That South Carolina just has to have that this year, or it could be a long year. You're too easy to defend when you don't have that. So, those are guys all to look out for as we head into practice. And I'm probably going to be wrong about some of my projected starters because there's a lot of competition, but certainly looking forward to seeing how it all shakes out. This will be the first time South Carolina's opened with a 1AA opponent for a first-year head coach since 1982, when Richard Bell played Pacific. The Gamecocks beat Pacific in Richmond. They only won twice for the rest of the year. Beat Navy. Why couldn't they beat Navy in '84? Yeah. And then Bell got fired. So, that's let's hope Shane Beamer has a little bit more success overall after he gets off to what should be an excellent start for him in his career.
All right, so you mentioned Jenkins on the offensive side of the football. Everybody's talking about Harris. Everybody's talking about Lloyd. They should be, even though Marshawn's never played a snap of football at South Carolina. I think we all know what he is capable of, and hopefully those expectations will be lived up to. But how about the guys named Zaquandre White and Rashad Amos? We saw Amos at the end of last year. JC, he looked good. Reports were he looked pretty good in the spring. I don't have much more outside of that. I've seen Zaquandre White play. He can play. His issue was holding on to the football. So you got to get that corrected because they're not going to give you the rock if you can't hold on to it. We all kind of know how that works. But from your standpoint, how much can those two guys help this football team, and in what additional capacity other than just running the football?
I could see White factoring in on kick returns, quite frankly. And yeah, spring game, he held on to it well. He is a high energy, competitive kid. He's one of those where you look at him and you go, Lloyd and Harris are awfully good. And quite frankly, guys, I think Rashad Amos is a better running back than Zaquandre White too. So Rashad Amos is 6'2", 220 and runs 4.5. But Zaquandre Wright's a great football player, and you can't really say that about Amos or Lloyd right now. I think you could safely say Harris is. So where is Zaquandre going to help? I don't know that with the lack of explosiveness on offense, you want to move him to defense. I think you got to find a way to get him the ball in creative ways. He and Jaheim Bell both. Jaheim Bell over the summer decided to grow a little bit. He's up to 6'3", 230. Really? I thought Jaheim Bell and E.J. Jenkins were the two best receivers in the spring game, and they're tight end or whatever. But you can also give Jaheim the ball from scrimmage, that kind of thing. Do the same thing with DeCarrion Joyner. So I think with White, you got to find a way to get the ball in his hands and get him on the field. I don't know how that is. I go back to the Holtz era when they put Ryan Brewer and Corey Alexander, who were running backs in the slot in Skip Holtz's offense, and that seemed to work well because they can always go back. But I think you have to find a way for him, as long as he continues his high level of performance. I mean, he had a fantastic spring, and I think Amos has a very bright future. I think you may not hear a bunch about Rashad Amos this year, but Kevin Harris goes pro that following year. You're going to hear a lot about Rashad Amos. And just a quick shout out, I think there's a reason Thomas Brown's coaching in the NFL now. In one class at South Carolina, he landed Amos late, flipped him from Western Kentucky, and also landed Marshawn Lloyd. That's going to end up being a heck of a duo, and I think they need to send Thomas Brown a thank you note here in a couple of years. That's just a prediction, but I think that's it, and I think too. Here's the key for Marcus Satterfield on offense: Don't overthink it and put yourself in a square peg in a round hole. In other words, if Jaheim Bell and E.J. Jenkins are your two best wide receivers, you've got Nick Muse at attached tight end. Don't sit there and go, well, they're tight ends. Use what you've got. Don't sit there and go, Zaquandre White's one of our best football players, but he's a third-string running back, so he never plays. Use what you got, because I'm telling you, and there's kind of a myth on the internet right now on some websites that it was all Colin Hill's fault with the receivers last year. That's not true, man. Sources on and don't put this on the JB and Goldwater Twitter because I don't want to get into it, but I'll tell your audience this right now. When two different staffs tell you the same thing and they don't know each other and they hadn't talked and it's their evaluation and it's the same thing, chances are it's true. So, and that's not to excuse Colin Hill's season last year, because I think Colin Hill mentally read into too much. And instead of trusting some of these guys that maybe will drop the ball, he just looked for shy and then held on to it too long because he couldn't process. And that's fine. He's still with the Bengals, by the way. And I'm not standing up for what I thought he played like doo-doo a lot of the time. But to hang it all on him, I think a lot of people are quite frankly setting it up to hang it all on Luke Doty so they can make a groundswell for Jason Brown, who apparently impressed everybody by throwing a touchdown to a receiver he's known his whole life, who's 6'8", against a fourth-team walk-on corner in the spring game twice. But and look, and I agree Jason Brown can throw it. But, listen, let me just be clear. The wide receivers are still, until I hear differently from someone I trust. Yeah, and look, you can sit there and pause little videos and stuff, and on TV sometimes it looks like guys are open. And I asked a coach on the Spurs staff about this one time, and he said, I was like, these guys look open. And he's like, no, because he was grading the quarterbacks. Let's just say, so people don't guess who it is. He was grading his quarterbacks. And he said, no, look at it from this angle. And he sat down and he froze it for me from the behind under center angle. And you're like, okay, so here's the guy you thought was open. He's like, he throws that, see that safety sitting right there? By the time the ball he's going to close and pick it. And that fans do that time and time again with the sideline angle on things. Mm-hmm. Guys that look open or not. I'm not saying Colin Hill never missed an open man, because he certainly did. All quarterbacks do. But I'm saying a lot of times, with some of these folks that kind of like to, get on the quarterback alone, they're talking about receivers being open, and they're really, really not. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. But hopefully they make it happen. Hopefully the quarterback, whoever it is, probably Luke Doty, maybe Jason Brown, has a good year. And heck, maybe if it is, I'll say this. I'll back up. It's not all on Colin Hill, no matter what anybody says. That's a lie, okay? Or just not true information. Even if the receivers start catching the ball this year, if they start catching the ball, you need to write another thank you note to Justin Stepp, and also guys like DeCarry Joyner and Jalen Brooks, the leaders of that group, because they have worked extremely hard this offseason. So if the receiving core ends up being okay, that's fine. But Marcus Satterfield, the challenge, I would think, and the old staff was, no matter who the OC was, they were terrible about this, because you're like, why is A.J. Turner on the bench when you're not, when you have negative 13 total yards and, he's allegedly a back, or Jake doesn't have anybody to throw the ball to. They just weren't very creative in their personnel. So I think that's a big challenge for Marcus Satterfield is with this bunch this year. Don't get caught square peg and round hole with your personnel, because you've got an unbalanced deal where, maybe your third string running back and your second and third string tight end are your three best receivers. And in that case, you just go roll.
I mean, but all reports are that's what they have. When I say reports, I'm not necessarily talking about what you're writing on the Big Spur. I'm talking about the real conversations that guys like you and John and Hale. I mean, I would throw myself in there. I have some connections up there as well. You know, when you talk to these guys, hey, what has this been like in designing the offense and what are those conversations? What do those meetings look like? That's all we keep hearing is, well, Marcus Satterfield didn't bring an offense in. Marcus Satterfield and Justin Stepp and Greg Adkins and Montario Hardesty and Shane Beamer and guys like Eric Kimmery and Pat DeMarco have brought together ideas to maximize personnel, and then that's what's going to develop our offense. And we've constantly heard Shane talk about it, what they've done at Oklahoma, and how everybody thinks that it's just, you know, this run and shoot, high fly and throw it all over the field offense. And he's like, actually go back and look at our personnel. It has changed year to year, and here's why. And then you go back and look at it and you go, oh, wait, he's actually right. So, I mean, what you're saying, you're right. I'm not discrediting you. You're exactly right. Is don't put the square peg in the round hole. Don't be that guy. But all reports are they've been trying to figure out who they're going to be offensively based on who they have on the roster, not necessarily what they want to put on paper and in a playbook.
Yeah, and I think Shane's experience at Oklahoma will certainly help that, because they were real tight end heavy when they didn't really have a lot of receivers and things like that. I'm just saying it would be, you know, and look, E.J. Jenkins played at St. Francis the last time he played a football game. Freak athlete, freak measurables, look good in the spring game, all that kind of stuff. He still got to adjust to the game. So maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's not one of their best. I'm just saying I am pretty confident Jaheim Bell is going to be one of their best. No regard. That dude, that dude's a baller. But, yeah, you've got to, you know, it would be a shame, I'm saying, if you're sitting there with, you know, whoever or whatever. But I know I've heard the same thing I've heard that's kind of the whole point of having Marcus Satterfield as the OC and Shane Beamer's offensive philosophy, just like it was at Virginia Tech with his dad and wherever, you know, they've been successful on offense is, you know, use who you've got.
Yeah, and let's not try to put, you know, lipstick on the pig here. I mean, let's all be honest with ourselves. Like, they have to have somebody play wide receiver. I mean, yeah, they might have to utilize more tight end sets or 12, 21 formations, all these terms that people are just now starting to use and teach Nick Saban about at SEC Media Days and things like that. I get it. They got a lot of tight ends who are very talented. They have a lot of running backs, Carolina does, who are very talented. They have a really good offensive line who paved the way last year for a bunch of yards. Hopefully they can pass protect this year. But JC, let's all be honest. Since they started throwing the football, whenever the hell that was in this sport, nobody's ever been successful offensively without somebody playing wide receiver. They got to have somebody. So is it Joyner? Is it Brooks? Is it Brown? I don't know, but somebody's got to play wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm going to take you back a little bit to 2008, and that was Steve Spurrier's worst team at South Carolina.
That was,
I believe,
Kenny McKinley's last year.
Yeah, and you think about who they had. You know, they had Kenny, and
Jason Barnes and
Jason Barnes stepped up in a couple of games for sure, and all that. But you know, Joe Hills was a backup on that team, and Mo Brown, who very proud of Mo, by the way. But who was our other guy? Jared Cook and Wesley Saunders caught passes, you know, and that kind of thing. Pat DeMarco was on that team too.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't.
That team, you know, running back, you had Mike Dave, the first Mike Davis, and then Eric Baker was behind him. I'm looking at it now. That was, boy, that 08 team.
That's Bobby Wallace's last year too.
Yeah, you had you did have Captain Munnerlin, Chris Culliver, Darian Stewart, 3 pros on the back end, and a pro at middle linebacker in Jasper Brinkley. So, and a young Cliff Matthews and a lot of Azure boys. So, but yeah, my point is, you know, if you can scheme it up, you can get by with 1 or 2 receivers, you know, because, but it's hard to sit there and go, well, because Steve Spurrier did it. Well, you know, he's Steve Spurrier, you know, and so that's the deal. But there have been teams over the years that have not been terribly deep that have just had 1 or 2, 3 targets and they get by.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just what I'm trying to clarify, and we'll let you go on this note here, JC, is I don't want anybody to misunderstand myself or you for trying to inflate the balloon here and going, well, look, they don't have any wide receivers. They got all these tight ends and running backs. You just put them out there, they'll be fine. That's not what we're saying. Like, they have to have somebody play wide receiver. So who that is, I'm personally hoping is to carry on Joyner because he's from our neck of the woods.
Yeah, great spring. So.
Yeah, a great spring. So I don't know, but here's what I do know. We got a few weeks to talk about this, JC. So, I'll monitor the board for complaints. And let's see. When you say things like so-and-so had a bad spring, you better respond, boy, or you're going to be in trouble.
I did, the other day. That was quite an interesting thread. I think my comrades on the Big Spur let me down because I didn't get a text about it or anything. There was three threads, and a lot of those guys. There's about 3 or 4 guys on my website that hate me. It's like going into a bar where you hate the owner and bartender. Your beer sucks. You suck.
Yeah.
Give me a beer. It's just kind of weird, but they were all over it. And I was like, these couple of guys. So I just deleted those threads and said, look, man, I didn't know this is a big deal. And look, honestly, I'll say it. Kevin Harris, per multiple sources, did not have the best spring. He's had a great summer, though, and so he's ready to go. And, you just don't need to worry about it. Sometimes running backs, they're not, they have a shelf life and they know it. And sometimes they're going to just go through the motions in spring ball sometimes. And it's just a shame because there's a new staff.
But look, hey, I remember spring when the report was Alshon Jeffrey had a bad spring.
Yeah.
But Alshon, ask Spurrier. Alshon didn't run out there and practice and blow he wasn't Jerry Rice, but on game day, no one was better than Alshon. So
and he stayed after practice and just like Kevin Harris was a hard worker. So hey, look, guys, I guess I'll see you in. I'm not going to be back on that next Wednesday, so maybe 3 weeks, or maybe I can do a Thursday, but we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it, man. You know what? We love you anyways. Have a safe flight to Myrtle Beach, and if you need anything, give Darren a call.
Yep,
definitely will. I'll hit you up, D.
Later, guys.
Thanks, JC. JC Shurburtt, owner of the Big Spur.com. 1:35 on a Wednesday afternoon. Generally, it's time for a timeout, but I think I can hang on for the final 24 minutes here, Darren, as I continue to battle this ridiculous sinus infection. When you have twin little girls, you have double the chance of illness, and that's how it works at our house. So instead of hitting a timeout, we're just going to fly right to Austin, Texas. We're making our trip around the world today, from Atlanta to Chicago to Austin, and it's time for Carolina football, part 5. We're halfway through it, a 10-part series with our friend Keith Allsep, who hosts one of probably maybe the best. Actually, it is the best podcast out there as it pertains to Carolina athletics, and that is the Locked On the Gamecocks podcast. And he is kind enough to look so handsome and join us today from, I wanted to say the Longhorn State, but it's the Lone Star State. Hey, Keith.
It can be Longhorn.
Oh, A&M won't like that.
Doesn't matter. Longhorns think it's a Longhorn State.
Well, Texas says they're the flagship university of the state of Texas. But over the last 10 years, who do you think's been better in football, South Carolina or Texas?
South Carolina has. I was looking at the records the other day.
I told a good Longhorn friend of mine this morning to buckle up and get ready for big-time athletics because you're getting ready to be just one of 16. And you're not starting at the top, okay? And so it's going to be a big change for Texas. But, I mean, they're going to go from getting their ass kicked by Kansas State and I think Charlie Strong lost at Kansas too. I know they lost at Kansas State like every time. Ames, Iowa, Gary Patterson. I mean, you're going from Iowa State, Kansas, TCU, and Texas Tech to Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia. And, oh, by the way, South Carolina's got a guy that was part of a staff that, ushered Tom Herman out of the state. So
True.
Buckle up. Longhorns.
So
That's my advice.
What I hear you saying by virtue of referencing their loss to Kansas is that at some point in time in the next few years, the Longhorns are going to get beat by Vanderbilt.
Well, I didn't say that, but Vanderbilt's up. They're undefeated right now. The Clark Lee era, it hadn't been. It's kind of been in Nashville the summer of Clark. That just doesn't sound as good as the summer of Shane, though.
No, you need to put that on a T-shirt like I have. It's time for Carolina football, where you can purchase these shirts and much more on our website, the JB and Goldwater Show. I like Clark Lee, by the way. I like Clark Lee. I like what he represents, and I think Vanderbilt is in for a fun ride with him. You're in Austin, basically.
I am. I'm in Round Rock, which is home of the Round Rock Express, which is owned by Nolan Ryan. It's a Rangers AAA team, and that's about 15, 20 minutes from downtown Austin when I-35 is clear, which is generally between 2 and 4 a.m. Otherwise, it could be an hour. So
that's what I was about to throw those exact same times out there. Well, what are you hearing about this from the Texas side of things? You're the only person I know who's in the thick of it.
Well, I think they're cautiously optimistic. I listened to a little bit of Mike Morgan, and I kind of agree and disagree on the money thing. Like, on House of Cards, Kevin Spacey's character who, rose from the whip, in the House, who was from Gaffney to president because he, was all about power. And I think this move is about power and having a seat at the table at the college football playoff, but also think it's about money because you're talking about the Longhorn Network becoming, it's fledgling. Okay. There's never been enough content. And especially when Charlie Strong was the head coach, because you couldn't, it's like squeezing blood out of a turnip to get more than 2 sentences out of that guy. And you're talking about now, JC and I were talking about this yesterday. This new TV deal, when you bring in Texas and Oklahoma, you could be talking about $100 million per year per institution. And to me, that's why I think it's great for South Carolina. I think this expansion is not doom and gloom because they're not going to move Alabama and Auburn to the east. There's a better chance of a snowball lasting through August in Austin than that happening. Or Columbia, which, by the way, right now is built directly above the 7th level of hell. And so I think it's great. And here's why. Is if you're South Carolina or a lot of these other second-tier schools, if you're not in the Big Six, okay, you're getting ready to now have more money than anybody else in the world in college athletics. And so, let's say if they're going to go ahead and expedite this thing, they'll be in the league next year. Let's say Frank Martin doesn't get it done. Well, maybe there's another guy like Chris Beard out there, and it's going to take $6 million a year to get him. Guess what? You got it. Go get him. Let's say Marcus Satterfield, Matt Rule's right, and Joe Brady gets a head coaching job, and he brings Marcus Satterfield back to the Panthers to be the offensive coordinator. Well, if you're Shane Beamer, and I kind of think he wanted to hire Mike Yurcich anyway, but he had, that Mike Bobo contract hanging around his neck, and those guys are friends. Well, maybe you say, look, I really want Mike Yurcich, but he's getting like 1.5 at Ohio State, or I'm sorry, Penn State. And you say, I need he said, if I can get him $2.5 million a year or 2.7 for 3 years, he's coming. You write that check, no questions asked. And so to me, this gives not just South Carolina, virtually all the schools in the Southeastern Conference, the unparalleled and unquestioned ability to A, retain your best coaches, and B, to go out and pluck coaches at other universities that are not at top tier SEC jobs.
All right. So on that note, then, Keith, let's play politics with this. Isn't that what we do in the world today? We play politics with everything.
With everything, even a damn pandemic, which I don't understand.
Yeah. So let's play politics with this then. If that's true, which pretty much it is, the money, yes, would be astronomical, and a lot of doors would be open that weren't open before for all of these programs in the Southeastern Conference. A&M, they would want the money, but they probably don't want Texas in there. Okay. But you can't get the money without Texas, right? Okay. So that's one side of it, and Oklahoma. If you get to that $100 million a year with a TV deal, that puts you light years ahead. If you're South Carolina, if you're Florida, ahead of Florida State and Clemson from a financial standpoint. But JC was just saying, if you're the SEC, Darren has said this as well, you go ahead, and if you're going to expand more, you go get teams like Florida State and Clemson.
I agree.
But if you're South Carolina and Florida and you're going, wait, I'm going to be bringing in another $50 million a year or more over my rivals, why would you want that? Why would you not politic some of your peers in your league to vote no on that?
Money. Because
so what?
You're making more money. And if Texas A&M can't stop this, it's not like South Carolina can stop Clemson or Florida can stop Florida State.
Well, if you play politics, you can. That's my point.
No, that's not going to happen, because here's what's getting ready to happen is A&M's already bitched about it. Missouri's bitched about it. When they have the vote Thursday on the SEC conference call, it's probably going to be 14-0 or maybe 13-1. Look, Sankey's got the votes, okay? Mitch McConnell is the lion of the Senate, okay? That dude is not bringing up anything when he's the majority leader unless he knows he's already got the votes in his back pocket. If Greg Sankey didn't know he had this in his hip pocket, it would have never gotten out. And so it's happening. And so I agree with Darren, and here's why. And I had a great conversation about this with a good friend of mine in North Carolina last night is, what do Alabama and Auburn and virtually Ole Miss and Mississippi State and all of these schools, what do they all have in common? Their in-state rival is a conference game.
Yeah.
All right. And so I say, don't stop at 16, go to 16, then go to 20. Get Louisville. That satisfies Kentucky. Get Clemson. Get Florida State, and then go get West Virginia. All right, that rounds it out. We can leave Miami down there, for buildings to continue to collapse, and they may be underwater in 10 years anyway. So that gets you to 20, and then South Carolina, Clemson's a conference game. So that's one of your 9 games in these pods. Maybe you got 5-team pods, and maybe you just roll a different pod every year. And Carolina and Clemson's a conference game, and that gives you another Coastal Carolina or Troy or East Carolina instead of 9 conference games plus Clemson and then 2 teams. Look, if you're South Carolina, why not Clemson? They're already a national powerhouse. They're already raking in money. Hell, they got a slide in their indoor facility, which is supposed to be the coolest thing in the world. And they're already recruiting at a national level. Okay, you're already at a distinct disadvantage. What's Clemson going to gain by going to the SEC other than not playing a schedule full of cupcake schools every year?
Well, that's where I was going with that. Okay, so if you're Clemson, we just had this conversation with JC as well. From a competitive standpoint, you've got that side of where you're going to get to play the best of the best every year in this league. from a competitive standpoint, you also now are giving up your rights, or your road, I should say, of on the path of least resistance. Because if you're Clemson, I mean, I know that we have some Tiger fans that listen and watch our program, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but their schedule outside of Georgia, there ain't a roadblock in there, and I'm including my Gamecocks in that conversation. There's just not one. Alabama's got a lot of roadblocks. And they're the perceived, preseason number one program out there. So if you're Clemson, why would you want to be a part of something that's going to make your road to what your new standard is, which is, winning national championship, right? In that their mantra, best is the standard. Well, that new road just got a little rocky.
Yeah, but Dabo's about big boy football and bring your own guts. Plus, he gets paid $9 million a year.
Oh, that part too.
So, I mean, let's roll. I mean, if he's tired of always hearing about the SEC and, oh, poor little Clemson, we have to be perfect because we're not Georgia or Alabama, then quit whining and put your big boy pants on and say, bring your own guts and let's go.
Yeah,
I think the other thing is, right now, that statement is very much true, right? That the roadblocks for Clemson are basically not there, especially when you compare it to an SEC program, any one of them. But looking at it now is not the way you need to look at it. What's the landscape going to be? So if the ACC stays where it is, and there are so few roadblocks, and the SEC is what it is about to be or bigger, and the Big Ten is what it is now or bigger, then those roadblocks are worse for Clemson. The fact you don't have them hurts you even more, and you have to make a move.
Well, I mean, I love movies, and so to quote Brooks Hadlin in The Shawshank Redemption, it was get busy living or get busy dying. Mm-hmm. And college football is going to be get busy expanding or get busy dying, because if you stay the same on the vine, you're going to start wilting because the landscape is changing. It's almost like that scene from The Dark Knight Rises when Bane blows up the football stadium and that guy's running across the field and they're, trying to stay ahead of the field crumbling underneath him. That's what's going to happen if you, as a conference, if you don't, get busy working on maximizing your league. And, I just think Bob Bowlesby found out what a great poker player Greg Sankey is, because those dudes have been sitting in the same room, probably beside each other for months, talking about the college football playoff. And, oh, yeah, this will be good for your league, the 6 conference champions, 12 teams and all of that. While as soon as he leaves, he's on the phone with Texas and Oklahoma. They got him on speed dial working on, hey, what else do we need to do? Let's cross all the T's and dot all the I's and let's go.
Keith Allsep 152 on a Wednesday afternoon, host of he says this is the best damn show in the state of South Carolina, referencing ours. So I'll turn that around on him and say that he's got the best damn podcast in the country as it pertains to South Carolina athletics. And this time of the year, talking about football, which, by the way, I've seen a lot on social media the last couple of days, people just giving you all types of props for your weekly roundtable and or a town hall, your weekly town halls. And folks who are not patrons of the Locked on the Gamecocks podcast might want to do that, because when you do that, you know more than the rest of us. And then you can tell us all how we should do our shows, which happens a lot. All right. Keith, let's move for the last 4 or 5 minutes to this year's football team. They are going to play football this year without Texas and Oklahoma, I think, in the SEC, unless somebody's working on redoing schedules or something like that.
That'd be something.
Yeah, that's the rumor.
Who knows? You don't ever know anymore. They might rip everything up and just whatever. But we were talking to JC about some of the players and things like that, guys. We want to keep an eye on. Which unit are you going to be most focused on from a coaching standpoint? And I'm going to say after week 2, because Georgia's week 3. So you need to probably, maybe be 2-0 going into that game and ready to go. And I think we all expect them to beat Eastern Illinois and East Carolina. So what position group are you most interested in as a whole going into week 3 in Athens? Basically, we're trying to determine whether the offseason and the preseason have been a success or they have not been a success.
Well, I think it's the strength of the football team that you're most interested in. If you ask me which unit I'm most worried about, obviously that's going to be wide receiver, although, they did change E.J. Jenkins' designation from tight end to wide receiver on the roster and the media guide, which doesn't match the one on the website, and I still don't understand that, but that's a topic for a podcast. So for me, how well is the defensive front holding up? Is J.J. Enigbare being the man? Has Zach Pickens taken the next step? Is he becoming a guy like a Javon Kinlaw like we all hoped and think he can, because he's a 5-star guy and you beat Clemson and everybody else in the country for him? How much is Jordan Birch playing? And then that other defensive tackle spot, is it Jabari Ellis? Is it Rick Sandage? Or is it Tonka Hemingway, who's 300 pounds now? That, and then the offensive line, that's a strength. You got like 7 guys that have started multiple games over there. You've got, Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd and Rashad Amos and Zaquandre White. Are you running the football like you did last year with Mike Bobo? Are you able to get 4, 5, 6 yards before contact? Are you able to, mow through Eastern Illinois and East Carolina and not show a whole lot of the intricacies of your offense by being very basic and by dominating weaker opponents on the lines of scrimmage? Those are the things I'm most interested in.
I agree. The lines of scrimmage are where my eyes will be. Absolutely. Keith, personally, my belief is that as the season goes on, they'll get things figured out at wide receiver. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be great. They'll get it figured out. Like, there's enough creativity there. Luke Doty is a guy who, if he has a fantastic year, that's gravy. But he's also a guy that I think we should expect to, if he stays the course as a starting quarterback, to have some ups and downs. Like, he's just going to have ups and downs. But if you're running the football successfully, and what that looks like, as you mentioned, really pertains to what they're doing up front. And if you're able to stop the run, I think that should give folks and allow that secondary, the second and third levels of the defense, time to kind of figure themselves out a little bit. That might give people some optimism that, hey, maybe we can get to a bowl game this year, or maybe more. I don't know, but at least we know it won't just be 3 or 4 wins.
Right. I mean, after that, I think it's, can Luke Doty become second-year Connor Shaw? Can he?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Move the sticks when it's 3rd and 7, nobody's open. Connor Shaw would take off, and he just had that innate ability to always run past that first down stick out of bounds and keep the drive alive. And will he trust his receivers? Because just like, your conversation with JC, clearly Colin Hill didn't trust anybody except Shi Smith. And he did hold the ball too long, waiting on Shi to get open. It got him in a lot of trouble. And then when he does throw it, will those guys catch it? Will Jalen Brooks catch it, or will Jalen Brooks, on the first play of the game, drop a 50-yard bomb like, almost hit him in the face mask like Mo Brown against South Carolina State that year? I was in the press box, and he was wide open running, and the ball just hit him in the face mask.
Yeah, I remember that quite well.
I mean, credit to him. He rebounded from that. But Jalen Brooks, I mean, he's got to step up. Dekirian Joyner's got to step up. Hopefully, Amarian Brown becomes a guy. And then you got Jenkins and Jaheim Bell and Kevion Mullins and Nick Muse and, maybe Eric Shaw, Trey Kenyon.
Yeah.
I think there's just more guys that have unique skill sets that can be H-backs and tight ends and wide receivers that Marcus Satterfield can utilize because, look, he's got to be a pretty smart guy. I don't think he's trying to fit square pegs into round holes. I don't think, good coaches are not like that. And if you've worked for Matt Rule at 3 different places, you must be pretty smart.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, the creativity is what's going to matter, and the KISS method that comes along with the creativity, keeping it as simple as they possibly can, at least to start the season. Nick Saban said at Media Days last week, you got to score points now. That's the name of the game. You got to score points. You got to score points. You got to score points. This is not going to be a team that goes out and scores a ton of points, but can they score enough points? And I think what's going to matter is whether they can run the football or not. Last year they proved it. Can they prove that again? Because everybody knows they ran the football. Everybody also knows they couldn't throw the damn thing last year or catch it. We'll see what it looks like. Certainly, Keith, we're going to have more of those conversations over the next 5 weeks. Carolina football is about 5 weeks away. We got, 39 days? Is that right?
Yeah, 38, 39.
Sounds about right.
Fine by me. I'm bored. I got nothing to do these days. On that note, what's the temperature out there today in Austin? Round Rock.
Currently it's 92 degrees, but
so it's hotter
generally
here.
About 5 to 6 p.m. here. That's the hottest time of the day, and I think it was like 101, 102.
Fine.
Oh, never mind. It wasn't that warm here. Yeah, you can keep that. It was rainy. It's rained for 2 weeks. Somebody turned the valve off, man.
It's about to be hot.
Hey, look, appreciate the rain. I can promise you out here in Texas, my car, which is black, it's been getting dirty a lot because it's been raining a lot. But guess what? It wasn't 102 degrees while it was cloudy and raining all the time. It was a lot more comfortable outside the house and inside the house because you didn't have to turn the air conditioning down. So thank goodness for rain and cloudy weather. just not the rain on Saturdays in the fall.
That's right. Yeah, we don't need rain at Williams-Brice Stadium this fall.
Especially for the Kentucky game.
Oh, you're coming to town for that?
That's right. We'll be having Locked on the Gamecocks podcast meet and greet at a location to be named shortly. And looking forward to seeing a bunch of my favorite Gamecocks and friends and being able to give everybody a hug and go watch the Gamecocks in a packed out Williams-Brice Stadium.
Well, I'll be there. If you invite me, I'll show up.
Well, you'll definitely be invited, and so is Darren, and honestly, so is everybody else. You don't have to necessarily be a patron or a member, but if you're not a VIP patron, last night, and I know if Clint's listening to this, he asked me the question, and I'm not going to mention the prospect's name, but we had very good intel on a prospect who will be at the cookout this weekend that said, well, they're really going to push for this guy to commit. And then today, a guy who's been all over it, Hale McGranahan from thebigspur.com, he had the same intel. And so it must match up.
Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody you must know something about something, Keith.
A broke clock's right twice a day. And, that was a rarity, but we had great conversations and a great story. South Carolina's undefeated against Texas in football. They beat them in Austin in 1957, and King Dixon ran a kickoff back. Well, King Dixon, he was a great Gamecock, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But King Dixon was sick as a dog. He had a stomach flu or, and he had diarrhea. Well, South Carolina was wearing all white.
Oh, no.
And King Dixon, running the kickoff back, had to make a cut in a hard plant. And when he did,
uniform wasn't white anymore, huh?
It happened. And he kept running. And for the rest of the time until he could get in the locker room, they had to put a towel around his waist because of the, not a grass stain. We'll leave it at that.
I just wish you would have.
Hey, he did not allow that to keep him from securing the bag. He scored the touchdown on the kickoff, and the Gamecocks beat the Longhorns in Darrell Royal's first game as Texas's coach. I believe it's his first game, or at least his first year as coach at Texas.
I wish you would have led the segment off with that story.
My friend John relayed that story. He's another VIP subscriber, and I think he had told me privately about that, and he forgot. But last night on overtime, he dropped that, and so
he dropped that.
The stories are not always as messy as that one, but there's a lot of good tidbits when we go to overtime because that's kind of unplugged. Nobody's being recorded, and it's usually about 20-30 minutes extra on top of the town hall, but you have to tune in. And so this coming Tuesday, August 3rd, we're opening up the Garnet and Black Town Hall for everybody. Anybody that wants a free preview of what you get on that, I'll post the link on our Patreon page, and I'll tweet it out on my Twitter, so you can follow me at K Allsep. You can honestly just Google Locked on the Gamecocks podcast, or you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/Locked on the Gamecocks, all lowercase, all together. It's really not that hard.
And just send it to us. We'll get it out too.
Yep.
I'll tweet it out, and so it'll be a preview.
Perfect.
For people that want to join.
And you can listen to all the poop stories you want next Tuesday night.
Yeah, hopefully we have scoop and not poop. That's the key. There used to be a recruiting publication called the Poop Sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Brett Ettinger, I believe it was in North Carolina, South Carolina, mostly an ACC. It turned into like an ACC journal after that. They bought him out. That's one of the early evolutions of recruiting, was the Poop Sheet. Now everybody just calls it Scoop, because Scoop, like you scoop ice out of a bucket. That's a lot more appealing than,
just a little bit, just a tad. Yeah. Anything else? Is that it?
Hey, that's about it. But if you're not members of the BigSpur.com, those guys are killing it. So are my friends Wes Mitchell and Colin Taylor.
Great people.
South Carolina's got it great. They got two great sites, and there's plenty of other podcasts as well. You got JB and Goldwater. You guys are killing it. I got to say, though, the Braves segment today just really ticked me off, because you already didn't re-sign Mike Melanson. You let Duvall go to the Marlins for peanuts, and now you're not going to make any trades.
Well,
come on, man.
All we could do is report and discuss around here. I can't do a whole lot about it, but we can put a note in with Corey. I think he's got some ins to the folks upstairs.
Very, very abysmal offseason for Anthropoulos this past year. I think that genius label, the shine's coming off of that.
Well, it's coming off my voice. I've been sick for 4 days, so on that note, I got to let you go, because I got to go take some medication.
Take a break.
Yeah, we'll try to. We'll do it again next Wednesday. Keith, save all the poop stories for us.
Please.
Hey, guys, I appreciate it. And it's good to hear Darren chime in.
Yeah, he speaks from time
I like
to time.
hearing from Darren.
I'll talk.
It's always good people that are follically challenged like we are.
Oh, he's all bent out of shape right now because of this Scherzer thing. So you got to give him a little bit of a break.
Well, I know. I can't believe that. Trey Turner and Scherzer. How can you? What's going on with the?
As long as it's not.
That's another show.
Yeah, I don't know. As long as you doesn't go to New York,
he will.
The Spankies.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
More Spankies and poop next Wednesday with Keith Allsep.
Scoop, hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, hopefully. Keith. See ya.
All right, guys.
Keith Allsep, the host of the Locked on the Gamecocks podcast. We're at overtime. Ugh. I might need a cheesesteak today. That would do the trick.
It's National Wing Day.
I thought that's tomorrow.
No, it's today. Well,
it's the 29th tomorrow.
Yeah. Sorry. It's tomorrow.
It's always National Wing Day, man. You can eat wings every day. I know this. We'll talk about it. I know tomorrow, but I'm not just saying it because they're a partner. The Dog and Duck has awesome wings.
20th anniversary party this weekend. We'll talk more about it. I'll be there. All 3 locations.
I don't. I was about to say. You're just going to be going to all 3, won't you?
Yeah.
Thanks to Corey, JC, Keith, Darren, and all of you. It's 2:10. We know that. That's okay. We'll be back tomorrow at noon on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.